let's go to Uvalde because the
Yes,
DOJ,
more good
the
news.
DOJ has done their job. They they went in and they researched and they interviewed and they did a review of what happened at Cobb Elementary School, and they released a 500-page report that tells you nothing that you didn't know
Oh,
before
damn.
you read the report, which is that the armed agents of the state in a community that was made up of a majority of Spanish speaking residents did little to actually make sure that they had a policy and procedure in place so that when somebody walked into a school building and started to kill the children, they could do something to actually stop that from happening. So they do a lot of talking, and
Wow.
Obama's dude did a press release, and he did a press conference and talked about how hard and diligently they worked to do the research and to get a full understanding of what happened with that response. And what we get is that what happened is they don't care about the brown people, so they didn't have anything in place to do anything that was going to put their lives in danger in order to save the brown people. So, but I could have said that before reading this 500 and something page report, which I am not going to read. I will say very, very.
Yeah,
clearly.
I didn't get to this. I'm just looking quickly at the executive summary here, and
they did a lot of collection of information though.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I shared a link to an article also next on the same line next to it. And
do they offer up a summary of their conclusions though? That's what I was hoping
in
that they would.
In every section there are recommendations of things that can be done. The recommendations make it clear that you had this whole department running and getting paid and nobody was actually doing their job.
Wait, you might not have known this, Renee, because we didn't read this carefully and we don't know. You might not have known this, but there were several critical failures and other breakdowns prior to and during and after the Robb Elementary School response.
And I don't laugh.
Just breaking news here.
I promise you, I'm not laughing about.
I mean, obviously, happened. We're not trying to be,
And I'm not trying to be but the absurdity that they wrote this whole report.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. I'm sorry. My bad, Renee.
Go. Just look.
The most significant failure was that that responding officers should have immediately recognized the incident as an active shooter situation, using the resources and equipment that were sufficient to push forward immediately and continuously toward the threat until entry was made into classrooms 111 and 112 and the threat was eliminated. Word. They should have recognized that it was an active. I'm sorry, Renee, but that is just
because it's mind
revelatory.
It's it is absurd. It's absurd, yo. And you needed a report. It's like when the DOJ releases these reports that say we found racism in the police departments. No shit, Sherlock. You needed to do a 2-year study to figure that out. I could have told you that. I could have been.
Accordingly, when a subject has already shot numerous victims and is in the room with additional victims, efforts first must be dedicated to making entry into the room, stopping the subject, and rendering aid to victims. These efforts must be undertaken regardless of the equipment and personnel available to those first on the scene. If I'm reading that correctly, they're saying you punk who stood around thinking, waiting for this and waiting for that. You were supposed to go in no matter what.
Right. But they're not. So, and this to me is this points very clearly to one of these broader issues that I feel like it keeps. Look, I know, but this is why I couldn't read the whole thing, because it is infuriating to read this. It's infuriating.
Because, by the way, this did not occur. That is. Efforts must be undertaken regardless of equipment. This did not occur during the Robb Elementary School shooting response, where there was a 77-minute gap between when officers first arrived on the scene and when they finally confronted and killed the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Let me stop. That's
right. So the article that I shared is from is it media? He does he writes and has a very small Arturo slide. I'm gonna blank on it. But
is this the same? I wonder if this happens to be the same Arturo who keeps dragging me
no,
on his
no,
YouTube.
no, no, no.
Is this
no,
not
no,
the
no,
same
no,
one?
No, different
Okay,
one. Different
just
one,
checking.
Different one.
Okay.
Different one. So
no
Arturo,
offense. Now I'm out for all Arturos.
Yeah. So that's a different one. Arturo does actually a really good job in some follow-up things that he does, and I follow his writings because I just feel like he points out things and his perspective is usually spot on. But what he points out in this piece that I thought was worth sharing is they never name names in the entire report. They refer to everyone in this like third person way, like the officer or the sheriff or so no one is held actually responsible for their blatant lack of respect for the lives of these brown people who were under fire in that building. Because in the end, in my opinion, that's what it boils down to, right? You have a bunch of brown children. They don't even speak English. We don't need to, we're not going to put our lives in danger to do anything to save them. And that's why you had this fight outside, because which one of us is going to actually go in there and deal with this was the fight, because none of them really cared about going in to deal with it. They were perfectly happy to stand outside and to talk to each other while those children were getting massacred inside the building. And adults, my apologies to teachers and the children.
So I just, not that I disagree or I'm challenging this, but I'm curious because I haven't read enough of any of this. But do you happen to know what is meant by the intentional misinformation by local and state leadership?
So they actually broke down all the communications that were going on between the authorities and the people on the scene. And what appeared, and again, I didn't read it. I also didn't read it fully because I got so frustrated, but it appears that there was really a lack of information provided about what was actually happening inside of the building. So if you have people standing around who are saying, well, and I don't want to, let me not go too deep into this because I don't want to say anything that's actually incorrect. But in the end, they were not communicating properly with each other or with the people who were not on site. And so, what ended up happening was this big, massive, like, you do it, 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 and nobody did it. And then you ended with what you ended with. So, but Arturo does good work. And I just, his pointing, I got this, and it was after I had kind of perused through the report, and I was like, yeah, he's right. Like, they don't name names. None of these recommendations are things that are like mind-boggling, like, oh, well, this is something people really should do. A lot of it, from what I could tell, was stuff that should have already been in place and that they should have already been doing. But it was a group of people who were, getting paid to over-police brown people. And so they don't really care about policy and procedure. They want their paycheck, and they want to be able to, stand on the necks of the people in the community versus actually providing a service that would be useful to their material conditions.
And it did look like he was saying that the names they were happy to name were, of course, the children doing the roll call of the dead to with that sort of symbolic nonsense of, but the those who are apparently complicit or responsible are just 77 minutes. That's crazy.
It's crazy.